Hello everyone, Zellerant here, and for today's video on Girls Frontline 2, we're going to be talking about Lind, who will be the upcoming T-Dal within the game, and whether or not she's going to be a unit you want to pull for. Now, I've already done a full overview of her entire kit, so we're just going to talk about her a little bit here generically. If you want to actually see that overview of the kit with the numbers, I'll post a link in the description on the original video I did on it. And so now we're just going to kind of talk a little bit about whether or not she's going to be a good pull for you based on where you're at on your account. Now, one of the biggest things within the last patch is we have the new EX difficulty for anyone who's now tried that out and seen that they have finally added something that requires a little bit more thought than just turning on auto at this point. Even if you have like V6 Springfield, V6 Klukai like I have, I could not just outright auto the new EX mode with them. And that's because they're very punishing to certain units and you have to kind of play it in a specific way, in that it does take a little bit more thought now. So with that, getting specific units for your specific teams is going to become actually more important in the future. And Lind is one of those that's going to be very, very good on the Corrosion team, especially if you're one that wants to invest heavily in the Corrosion team. I liked to compare her in the past to being kind of Chawa, where she is very, very strong, but she's very tied to the Corrosion team. And that biggest thing is with these stacks of Candy Glaze, that, if I remember from her original kit, it's all tied to corrosion damage being done. So the best way to get a lot of corrosion damage being done is through Klukai, who can do multiple attacks per turn with her ult, for example. You have Peridia alongside Mishti, who can do a lot of corrosion attacks against an enemy or a boss, like Gunsmoke Frontline. Because if you have Peridia at V6, which I think a lot of people at this point should be approaching that, or already have that if you've been grinding the dispatch missions where you can effectively farm for Peridia dupes. And you have a copy of Mishti, that's adding a lot of potential attacks you can do on a boss to get rapid amounts of stacks of Candy Glaze on them. And so with those, you can really unlock the amount of damage Lind can do. Now, Lind gets even stronger, just like Chawa, as you get more dupes, but she starts off right off the bat being pretty good. And if you do heavily invest in them, even at this point on the CN version, Lind and Klukai together, paired together, kind of those two V6s with the Corrosion team, is outright still, from what I can tell, the strongest damage dealers in the game at this point, especially single target. Not even Voimastina surpasses them. Now, Voimastina surpasses them in just how good she is by herself. She doesn't really need anyone to be stupidly strong. But these ones with the heavy investment are the strongest. And I know a lot of people probably already have invested heavily in Klukai. Klukai was the #1 target for getting a lot of dupes, alongside the next one being Springfield, which we got not too long ago. And so I think a lot of people probably already have V3 or maybe even V6. I think like half of my platoon had got V6 Klukai, and a lot of people in the beginning of the game saved up specifically for V6 Klukai. Lind is going to love that team and work very well in it and do a lot of damage. And she doesn't need the dupes to do that damage. She just gets crazy strong after, especially when it starts doing things like it increases the amount of stacks of Candy Glaze you can get, which Candy Glaze makes it, I don't know if they specifically state Candy Glaze right here, but I'll have a link to the spreadsheet. Oh, right here. Yeah, Candy Glaze increases corrosion damage down. So this is stacking, especially, I think it's 1%. So, and then you start with only allowed 10 stacks. So you can get a 10% damage increase at V0. And then one of the dupes raises, I believe it's actually V1, raises the dupes to 30, a stack of 30, which you'd say is 30%. But then it also increases it from a 1% damage dealt increase to a 2%, now bringing it from a 10% increase to a 60%. And that's just one of the dupes. And so as you increase the amount of dupes of her you pull and bring her up to like Vertebrae 6, she does get to crazy levels of damage. But that also brings in the one thing that Chawa that I've mentioned with her is that she's the best borrow, in the sense that when you're doing Gunsmoke Frontline, for example, if you have a whale within your platoon, which if you're in one of the more active ones that are still around, then you probably have someone that's a whale in there, and they have this, she's the unit you borrow, because one, Klukai was the one that I think most people pulled for, V3, V6. So you should have, hopefully that, or if you don't, she's going to be the one doing a lot of damage, even if you have like a V0 or V3 Klukai. Peridia was a standard banner unit, so you should have her at this point and have multiple dupes of her. And if you really like the Corrosion team and have been investing in them, you should have pulled Mishti at this point as well. So you should already have the rest of the team together, and you don't need heavy dupes of Mishti to take advantage of her. Peridia, like I said, is the free one, and Klukai, I think most people invest in dupes into her. And even if you didn't, if you have her, you still can do alright at V0, paired with a V6 Lind, who's going to be the unit you would borrow when you go up against a boss as mono Corrosion, which is basically what you're going to be doing at this point. We had the hybrid of Hydro Corrosion with your Tololo Nikita Springfield paired with like a Klukai Peridia or a Klukai Mishti. Now that we have Florence, you can now kind of just do that mono Hydro, all one Hydro team against on one side of the boss, and then the next you do mono Corrosion with Klukai, Mishti, Peridia, and now Lind, and then eventually the latest unit they got out in CNS. So definitely a great pickup if you're wanting to use her outside of the Gunsmoke Frontline. In the Gunsmoke Frontline, you're most likely going to borrow because someone else is probably going to invest more into her than you will. But she's still great at V0. And with the new EX mode, you definitely are needing to get that well-rounded teams for the different style of combat based on what the buffs and debuffs are. I mean, you just can't outright auto it anymore, which is a nice change of pace for it. I still hadn't actually completed it because it's been difficult enough and I just don't have the time. But me having V6 Springfield, V4 Tololo, Nikita, Florence, and all them, V6 Klukai, all the different combinations, I was not able to just outright auto all the new difficulty content. So they kind of tie it down with the new buff and debuff system they have in it. Now, if you put in the time with those, you should be able to easily complete it with the dupes. But also, even just having her at V0, it'll make it easier depending on what the buffs and debuffs are. So, just to kind of summarize it for a quick on there, if you really like the Corrosion team, if you've invested in them, if you have Klukai, Mishti, Peridia, the whole team already at this point, and you've put in a lot of dupes of them, or even if you haven't, Lind is definitely an easy pickup. If you've skipped a lot of the Corrosion team, if you decided, I don't want Klukai, you didn't pull Klukai, you don't have Mishti, maybe you have Peridia. I think pretty much everybody's going to have Peridia because she was a standard unit, but that's all you got. She's definitely going to be someone you can kind of skip because she is tied to the Corrosion team. But yeah, that's pretty much it with her. Like I said, I've already gone over her kit and all the numbers, and I kind of don't want to just repeat that. I'm just going to put a link to that in the description if you want to go watch that video to take a look at her entire kit with numbers. Now, when she does drop, one thing I didn't do with Florence that I actually probably will do with Lind, I really wish I would have done with Florence, is I'll make a video kind of showcasing her in action once I get her. Now, I will only be getting V0. The only unit that I really feel like I'm going to pull for V6 at this point is the next one's going to be Void Mastina, the next OP one, basically, because, like I said, I'll probably have someone in my platoon that already pulls V6, and I'll use that. And maybe I can showcase her V6 with the Morrow for anyone that wants to see kind of the damage difference between my V0 and a V6. Both will be really strong. You'll just see a significant difference between big numbers and massive numbers. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's my thoughts on Lind as she comes out here in the next couple days. Just let me know your thoughts on whether or not you'll be pulling for her in a couple days. But yeah, if you like my content, if you could like, comment, subscribe, it really helps. And thanks for watching.